Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, W-I-Z-E, and I have a very special guest on with me today. He's a former mailman. He's an author right now. He has an amazing story to share with everyone. Welcome to the show, Doug Hughes. Hey, Doug.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, pleasure's mine, man. I was like I said before, I was reading your story. It's a real interesting story. I can't wait for you to tell everybody about it. So let's tell a little something about yourself. You're a retired mailman.
Yeah, I kind of retired or got fired from the post office, depending on which way you want to cut it. After I made a flight in 2015, I landed a gyrocopter, which basically looks like a flying motorcycle, 250 pounds. I flew it from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, 70 miles south. Turned left at the Potomac, went 2 miles up the Capitol Mall, past the White House, past the Washington Monument, and I landed on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a trip. I had 535 letters, one addressed to every member of Congress, where I called them out on the issue of money in politics and corruption, because that's the thing that's preventing us from solving anything else in this country. Whether you want to look at endless wars or global warming or prison reform, criminal justice reform, the education system, you go down any of the problems that this country has. If there's money associated with that, it is getting milked by special interests who are indirectly paying Congress to maintain the status quo of this problem continuing as long as that problem is profitable for a select few. You look at endless wars. Why on earth have we been at war almost continually since the Korean War? Okay, there isn't anybody threatening the United States. Okay, not Canada, not Mexico. I don't think we're at risk of being invaded from the Atlantic or the Pacific by some sort of a seaborne assault. So why are we continually at war? Could it have something to do with the
Makes profit? Yeah.
There's big money. There's big money in it.
And the thing is, they divide us with nonsense. They divide us here with not red and blue right now. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, how are you public? Like, it doesn't matter what side of the party, what if you're red or blue, it doesn't matter. How is it that you go into public office and you come out richer than your constituents? How is it you become a public servant and when you come out, you're a multi-millionaire? I don't understand this.
Let's look at that, because there was a study done by Ballotpedia, which is a reputable web-based organization, and they looked at the net worth of members of Congress. And on average, for the period of time that they did their study, members of Congress double their net worth. About 20% of the members of Congress double their net worth every year. Not the same 20% every year, okay? But 20% of Congress, you can pretty much count on doubling their net worth in a period. Either those guys are brilliant investors or they're hustling. Okay? And I don't say hustling in a constructive way.
I know. I know. Believe me, I feel you. I know. I understand what you're saying, because to me, I look at it. How does it? Mitch McConnell comes from one of the poorest states in the country, Kentucky. And yet this man is a multi-millionaire.
Both sides of the aisle are in it.
Yeah. Pelosi, another one.
Would you kind of guess what percentage of Congress, when they leave Congress, either because they lost their election or because they retired, what percent of them become lobbyists or become associated with the lobbyist industry?
I'm probably sure a lot of them.
50%. Okay. They are tracked on opensecrets.org. They've got a page where they list the people from Congress, no longer in Congress, and somebody did the study on it. I've got this stuff. I got a memoir that I wrote, and I've got footnotes in the memoir that point to the stuff that I say that you otherwise wouldn't believe is true. How much do you think somebody out of Congress makes as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C.?
A lot of money.
Starting salary. And it's not fixed, but somebody did the homework and they figured it out. $2 million a year.
Wow.
They go from $160,000 a year to $2 million a year by losing an election. Quite a prize for the runner-up. Okay?
Yeah, it is.
But you only get offered that if you've been playing ball with K Street, with the lobbyists, okay, during the time that you were in office, okay? In my opinion, and based on what I've read from interviews that have been done, what happens is this: a former member of Congress approaches a current member of Congress, because a former member of Congress has got access that the press and you and I do not. They can just go in to meet somebody, all right? And they say, "How you doing, Joe? You lost your election last year. The life must suck." No, life does not suck. I'm just back from Vail. I bought a chalet. Next month, I'm going to Europe. I'm living high in the hog. Gee, that's great. You lost your election. You're doing so well. Yeah. I'm working for Joe Schmo Law Firm as a lobbyist. I only put in a few days a month where I have to come into D.C. The rest of the time, I do whatever the hell I want. It's great. I'm riding the gravy train. And by the way, and here's the hook, the former member of Congress goes ahead and says, "I brought up your name because I think you've got talent." And they're always looking for people at the office, okay, former members of Congress who are on the ball like you. And by the way, I gotta justify my trip. I had to come up here to say hi anyhow, but I gotta justify this. There's a bill coming up, and my employer would like you to vote no. And that's it. He doesn't offer a bribe. There's nothing illegal that has happened here, okay? But he let the guy know if he plays ball, there's a multi-million dollar job waiting for him. It's lined up. He doesn't have to fill out an application, okay? For the rest of the time that member of Congress is in office, he will not vote against anything that law firm has a client for. Okay? He won't. If a major client for that law firm, that lobbyist law firm, say it's an oil industry, and they pump several $1 million into that law firm for lobbying, and his friend comes up and says, "Look, this one's make or break." Okay? 40% of our income at the law firm is coming from this special interest group. So I cannot emphasize enough, you've got to vote this way, okay? That's a legal bribe. And he knows he has just blown away his future job if he votes the opposite direction. This is bribery made legal by delaying the payment of the bribe. Nobody gets any money until they're out of office, okay? Tens or hundreds of millions of dollars from the oil industry, from the drug industry, okay? The coal industry, the private education industry, Okay, the private prison industry. All right, this money comes in, and it doesn't directly and immediately go into a congressman's pocket. It's delayed. Okay, but they are just swimming in cash when this guy leaves office, and as long as he's played ball with Wall Street, he's got it made for the rest of his life. That's how the system works. Okay, and everything changes when you chase big money out of politics before, during, and after a term of office. And I'm sorry, I've monopolized the conversation.
Oh no, no. Listen, that's what you're here for. Is talk about what you know. This is
That
what
went
you
over
know.
you. I didn't want to do that.
No, we're good. We're good. Believe me, I'm interested. I'm interested in all this. This is, to me, is amazing because I'm always talking about this with, because I have friends on the blue side and the red side, and one is always bashing the other, and I always tell them, I say, listen, don't none of these politicians care about us. We're nothing to them. We're numbers. It doesn't matter to them. All it matters to them is that they have us divided, and they can control the money any way they want to control it. That's it. That's all it is about for them. It's all about the bottom dollar.
K Street's not red and blue. They're given to Democrats. They're given to Republicans. They are making sure that they can either make anything happen that they want to have happen or stop anything that they want to stop. But let's step back, because what happened is after I made my flight, okay, and it was planned for a long time. When I came up with the idea, I didn't know how to fly. Okay, I had to learn how to fly and buy a gyrocopter to make one flight, and I knew that I was never going to get that gyrocopter back. It was a disposable piece of machinery.
Yeah.
And after it was all done, the Justice Department didn't sell the gyrocopter. I might have got it back. Okay. They paid people to destroy the gyrocopter rather than sell it. Okay. Because they did not want that thing to wind up in a museum somewhere or anywhere where it would serve as a reminder to what the protest was about. They wanted me and the gyrocopter to go away. And I went to prison. That's how they put me away for 4 months. All right. They were trying to get 9 years, but they were able to put me away for 4 months, hoping that would shut me up. Hadn't worked.
No, it has not.
The book is, after I got out of prison.
Yeah.
And Social Security doesn't go as far as you wish it did. I wound up driving Uber nights. And I had a business card that it has a picture of my gyrocopter just a few seconds before it lands with the Capitol Dome in the background. Really great shot. So people, if they're not hiding behind their phone in the car, they ask me, you do this full time? And I say, no, I just do it nights. Oh, what do you do during the day? I said, well, I'm a pilot. Oh, that's cool. What do you fly? And I say, well, I fly a gyrocopter. And they say, a gyrocopter? And I said, yeah, I got a picture of it. And I give them the picture. And they look at the gyrocopter, which looks like a motorcycle. I mean, there's no body to it at all. It's just a frame and an engine and me sitting on top of it. And so they see this coming in the Capitol Dome in the background, and they go, wait, you're the guy. Yeah, I'm the guy. And so from there on, for the rest of the trip, however long it is, we're going at it. And they want to know the personal questions about the flight. They want to know who I am. How is it that my wife didn't kill me? Do I have any family? What happened afterwards? Did the cops rough me up? They get a bunch of questions. So I found out from my audience what these people saw me on TV, and they heard the story from the news, but they got questions. And it's like son of a bitch, I got the guy in the car with me and I can ask him anything I want. And eventually, after we run through all of that, okay, they say, why'd you do it? Okay. And then I would talk to them about the 2-page letter that I spent a lot of time writing. And I printed out 500 copies of them, put them in separate envelopes with addresses and signed, and had a friggin' postage stamp on every one of them. These were letters to Congress that I wrote. And I wrote what's in that about what is important. And these people, as you talk about, you got some friends that are Republicans, and it didn't matter whether the person leaned right or leaned left. They got it right off the bat. Money in politics is what prevents progress on the things they feel most strongly about. Whether the Republicans or Democrats, they're on board. And because of my flight, because of the fact that I went to prison, because of the fact that I risked getting killed, okay, I've got credibility with them. It doesn't mean they believe I'm right. It just means they can believe me. They don't believe any frigging politician anywhere, but they're listening to me because they know what they're hearing from me is the truth as I see it, as I believe it. And they ask me if there is a way that this can be solved. And there is. This is what I believe very strongly based on what I've studied, because once I understood how corruption worked, I wanted to know the same thing they're asking. Can it be undone? And as voters, we have the power, but guess what? Democratic voters, not the Democratic Party, Democrats alone don't have the power to solve it. Republicans alone don't have the power to solve it. We're going to have to talk to each other and realize we have a common enemy and work together in the electoral system in order to get candidates from blue districts who agree to get big money out of politics. And we elect candidates from the right, Republicans, who believe very strongly in small government and the things that I don't happen to agree with. But we elect Democrats from blue districts, Republicans from red districts, where they agree specifically on what they're going to do to end big money in politics during the process of running for office, during the time that they are in office, and after they get out of office, okay? Because there's a platform that is not leaning towards one side or the other that could be done, could be passed, but we need a majority in Congress. Not a Democratic majority, not a Republican majority. We need a reformist majority that sees this as the first thing we have to do before we'll get anything else done.
Yeah.
You there?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's why one of the things I think is term limits. Like senators and congressmen need to have term limits. Some of these men and women have been in office 20, 30 years. It's time for them to go.
I hear people talking about term limits as if that's a solution.
It isn't. You have
it
to,
isn't.
but
No, term limit. Here's the problem. Term limits presumes that these people were honest when they went to Congress and they were corrupted over a period of time by the system. Okay? No. When a seat is opening up in Congress here in Florida, the Florida party, the management, okay, they go ahead and select who they want to fill that seat in Congress. And they look to the pool of reliable people in Florida who are already corrupt. Okay. We get a few renegades from both sides that are there. Okay. Mm-hmm. But they're a very small minority. By and large, what happens when a seat opens up, it is filled by a corrupt party with a corrupt person. And term limits suggest that they're going to run out of corrupt people after a period of time, and they're going to have to start sending honest people because they're out of crooks. It ain't true. Okay, they got an endless supply of crooks that they can send. Term limits won't do it. What will do it is making it impossible for anybody to get rich legally from their time in office. And I gotta, let me look at the clock. Here's the way corruption works. And I've mentioned this phrase a couple of times: before, during, and after. Okay? Before, that's when you're running for office. That's campaign finance reform and Citizens United. Citizens United being the Supreme Court decision that allows unlimited corporate money in elections. Okay? Yeah, you got that right. As much as a corporation is willing to invest, they legally can. Okay? So the solution to before is no corporate money and only small dollar donations from people. I favor the idea of citizen-funded elections, okay, where everybody is given a small amount that they can designate in the next election to the candidates of their choice. Everybody has got a voucher, a government voucher for $100. If you don't use it, you lose it. But you've got $100 you can designate towards elections as you choose. This is a huge amount of money if people participate.
Yeah.
But if I say you get $100 and you can go to the mall and you got to spend it by this date, okay, you're going to go, wow, I'm not going to let that coupon expire, and I got to figure out what I'm going to spend it on. So you wind up with people who have $100 in free election money who wind up paying attention to how they spend that money. Okay, so if you undo Citizens United and you set it to small dollar donations, okay, that's campaign finance reform. The other thing is the thing you brought up first, how these people get rich while they're in office, okay? And there is an easy solution to that. It's called a blind trust. You heard the phrase before? You know what it is?
No.
A blind trust is an investment company who manages your investments, your stock portfolio. But it's blind because you're the guy with the money and you don't get to know or affect how that money is invested. And it can be set up on the basis that your stockbroker, your investment company, is required to move your money around. Which means after a period of time, you no longer, you might know that when you gave the portfolio over, you were heavily invested in oil. You don't know when you vote on something if you're still heavily invested in oil, okay? During the time that you're in office, where your money is and where it's making money, you don't know. You cannot find out. You go to jail if you try to find out, and that investment company would face criminal charges if they collude with you to affect your investments. Every time you vote, you cannot vote to make yourself rich.
Shit.
Right? It's been done. The blind trust is not new, okay? And there are rules for how it gets set up, and there are rules for the company that you're dealing with it in a blind trust. But the bottom line is, if you break the rules, you go to jail, whether you're the congressman or whether you're the investment company. So that's before, that's campaign finance. During, that's insider trading, okay? The biggie is the one that I mentioned, after, okay? After is when you cash in by working as a lobbyist or working for a special interest group, okay? Or you wind up opening your own law firm, and lo and behold, your only client is oil companies who pay you 5 times what you're worth, okay, after you leave, okay? But you can watch the money that's coming in after you leave office, hypothetically for a decade after somebody left office. You watch their money, and if they say, yeah, I got offered $1 million to give a speech for a special interest group, government says, whoops, sorry about that. You can't make $1 million for a speech for a special interest group. You're a former member of Congress. You can give that speech. but you can only make what you would have made as a congressman, plus your direct expenses for the airfare and the hotel and your family if you want to bring them along. Okay? You cannot make $1 million for the speech. All right? All of a sudden, the doors of you being able to get rich are closed. All right? Mitt Romney used a phrase that I love. He wasn't talking about members of Congress, but he talked about self-deportation. Okay? That's what would happen in Washington, D.C. if these people could not get rich. People would decline to run for office if they could not get rich during the time they're in office or after they leave. They'll quit and they'll find a different hustle. Okay? And they will be replaced by people who understand that they can't get rich legally by going to Congress. So you replace, say 80%, hypothetically, 80% of the people who were in Congress are in it to get rich. They freaking quit. The 80% who come in know they can't get rich. They're honest. It doesn't mean that they're smart, but all of them are working for the people instead of working for the people with money. Everything changes. All right? Climate change. The petrochemicals cannot buy Congress anymore. So what do we do about global warming? I don't know what legislation would come out. I can't promise you it would be what I want or what you want, but something would get done. Okay? Criminal justice reform, if the private prison industry cannot go ahead and flood K Street with money before something is coming up, people are going to look at private prisons and going, God damn, these things are more expensive than if we did it ourselves. And in order to guarantee their profits, these private prisons are killing people, and they are. Okay? I'm a felon. I know what of I speak. All right? I didn't go for, I had it light compared to people I went to prison with, but I know what I'm talking about. All right? Education, okay? That's getting slanted, okay, to favor the private prison industry, the private education industry. So what decisions will Congress make? I don't know if they'll be good. I'll disagree with a lot of them, but they will all be designed for the people because that's where the power is now coming from. The corporations can no longer run things. And so this one change, changing big money in politics, affects everything else that we currently can't do anything about. How much pressure can you put on somebody in Congress to get them the vote the way that you want them to vote if they know they're going to have to give up a $2 million a year job to give in to your pressure? There's no way you can apply. There's no way you or 3 million other people from that state that you're in can apply enough pressure to a senator to get him to give up a $2 million a year job that he knows he's got sitting riding on the whole thing. Okay? People need to understand the dynamic, and then we need to get together and define what reform is. I don't claim to know exactly. I've identified the three main components: before, during, and after. Exactly how it would be shaped, I don't know. But if the people say, okay, we're not going to vote for anybody who hasn't signed on to reform as it has been defined, that the Democratic candidates, and all of a sudden you get a majority in Congress who agrees on fixing that one thing first.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's just amazing. People need to get your book, find out what's going on with, like, because it's part. You said it's 90% memoir.
Yeah, because people consider politics and corruption in politics to be gross. It's disgusting. Okay, so you see somebody on the street who's got a deformity. Do you look at it or you look away? If you're human as I am, you look away. You don't stare at it. You don't want to see it. You don't want to be reminded of it. Okay. But if you found out there's a cure for that deformity, okay, and all you had to do was know about the deformity and know about how it can be repaired, you take a real interest in it. The book is 90% the story of my flight because that's what people wanted to hear about. Okay, it's what they found interesting in it, and I'm fine with that. Okay, but when they talked to me and they realized that I'm not an idiot, and I happen to know what I'm talking about, and I actually understand what corruption is. Most people have a very general idea about what it is, and they really don't want to know because it's so freaking gross. It's like child molestation. You don't want to know the details. Okay. But when they find out that I know what it is, and I have an idea that it can be fixed, they want to hear. So I wrote the book with that formula in mind. Okay? I've got an interesting story that I think I told fairly well, but along the way, in short lessons, I tell people what corruption is in the three areas that it exists. And then I teach them how it works. Okay. How does it function? How do they make this hustle legal?
Profitable, yeah. How do they make it profitable?
How did it didn't just happen overnight, and it's not just the Democrats and not just the Republicans.
No, it's all of them. It's all of them.
It grew up like kudzu. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a vine. It just grows, and like an abandoned building, it'll just grow up and take the whole thing over. That's how corruption works. And it didn't happen in one season. But the people of this country, conservatives and liberals, find it disgusting. And people are frustrated because they know Washington is no longer representing the people. It's all a hustle. It's all a lie. Everybody's lying to you.
Yeah.
All right. But for them to hear, wait, there is a way to fix it. And by the way, you will not hear this from either political party. You won't hear it from almost all candidates. Even the candidates who are reformers at heart have got to whisper the truth. Because if they say it out loud, they're going to piss off their colleagues to the point they can't get anything done in Washington because their colleagues in their own party will not talk to them if they tell the truth out loud about how corruption works. The media is not telling us how this works, okay? They'll touch on it vaguely and a little bit, but then dance away from it, okay? Why? Because you've got 6 corporations own 95% of the media, okay? Guess what? They don't want to talk about it either. What supports the mainstream media? Where's the money come from?
Ads.
Bingo. Where do the ads come from?
Corporations.
Wall Street. Corporations. Yeah, there are some small advertisers out there, but by and large, if you're ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, okay, if you piss off your advertising base, they'll take their money someplace else. Okay, so if you start telling the truth about how Wall Street through K Street controls Congress, okay, if you're ABC and you decide you're going to break this and push it, okay, you have a hell of an audience and no advertisers. Okay, so nobody goes there. A year after I flew, exactly, there was a demonstration in Washington, D.C. about money in politics. A friend of mine named Kai Newkirk spent months organizing it, and he got thousands of people to turn out in Washington, D.C. The first day of a week-long protest in Washington, D.C., they sat down on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building in an act of civil disobedience, which is also what I did, civil disobedience, nonviolent. 400 people were arrested in one day. They took them out on police buses, okay, because the police knew that it was going to happen and they knew it was going to be nonviolent. They were not dressed down in riot gear because they knew they didn't need to, okay? It was a peaceful protest and you heard nothing about it. The first day, the second day, the third day, they were chanting on the steps of the Capitol, "Where is CNN? Where is CNN?" Okay, there was a media boycott. Okay, when you bust 400 people out in a single afternoon in Washington, D.C. at a protest, is that not news?
Yeah.
Okay. Washington Post was not there. The only publication that covered it was the Tampa Bay Times, the only major publication, okay? And the Tampa Bay Times is one of the few remaining independent newspapers in the country. They're not owned by those corporations. Okay. So yes, they had a correspondent who went up from Tampa to Washington, D.C., interviewed those people and covered it. There was a blackout on the rest of it. Most of America never heard that protest on big money in politics happens. And a lot of people during the year up until then who heard me say the media is complicit in not covering this story, they rolled their eyes at me. Okay, that's just a little bit out there, Doug, to suggest that the media is also in on it. None of them are rolling their eyes now. Okay, I bring up that story. I bring up that incident. There is no longer any doubt that the media is complicit.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we got to go around. We got to go around it with podcasts because they can't control those. I got to go around it with a book because they can't censor that. Okay, and I'm planning a 48-state tour by gyrocopter. It'll take me 4 months. If I pull this off, I'm going to hit legally, and I have my pilot's license. I'm going to fly to the state capitals of the lower 48, starting near Washington, D.C. I'll fly south, okay? I'll go ahead and pick up Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. Then I'll go ahead and head out west. When I hit Southern California, I'll go north. I pick up Nevada, Oregon, Washington. Then I come across the top, and then I go down the northeast from Maine all the way down the seaboard, and I finish up in Washington, D.C. All right. This is doing it where I'll interview with small newspapers, local TV stations, okay? Because those correspondents don't know there's a blackout, okay? Yeah. Most correspondents are honest journalists who see what they're doing as a vocation, okay? The gag order comes from the very top, and it's only whispered. They don't want everybody to know that there is a gag order on this. And so I'm planning on getting covered locally before corporate America realizes that I've pulled an end run. And even then, they don't want to call several hundred news outlets and say, do not cover Doug Hughes, because they have to advertise that there's a blackout, which they do not want their journalists, local correspondents to believe is happening, okay?
Yeah.
But by the end of the tour, I intend to be getting covered nationally because this thing will start to pick up steam and it'll start to get covered more by podcast and it'll start to become an event. And I'm hoping that I can get the national coverage. But what I'm trying to do is get people aware that they cannot trust any institutions to do this, okay? Yeah. It has to come from the people who get together through the groups that are already working on money in politics. And there are left-leaning and right-leaning groups that are working on big money in politics, okay? These groups have got to be the authors of what real reform is going to be, okay? Not a mailman, okay? I'm talking about Harvard scholars. I'm talking about people in the media. I'm talking about people with the clout and the education to define across the board, so that it's not prejudice for the Democrats or the Republicans, what reform is. And that's what we bring to the candidates, okay, who would run. How much time we got?
Oh, we got time. You got to leave?
Okay. I told you there's a way that this could be done, okay? And here's where everybody says that's a great idea, but you can't possibly do it. You've already told me the Democratic Party organization, the Republican Party organization, almost all of Congress and the media is against this. How the hell are you going to actually do it?
Yeah.
There was a guy in office named Eric Cantor. Name halfway ring a bell with you?
Eric Cantor? Eric
Cantor. He was the number 2 guy in the U.S. House of Representatives behind the House Speaker, Republican. He would have become Speaker of the House. Okay. This is whatever, 4 or 5 years ago, he would have become the Speaker of the House. Except he got beaten in a primary election in a safe district in Virginia near Richmond by a Tea Party guy. Okay. Because Eric Cantor was a complete suck up to Wall Street. And Tea Party Republicans had tried multiple times, multiple ways to get his attention about what they thought was important, which was not sucking up to Wall Street. And I disagree with the Tea Party, and I'm a Democrat, and that's fine. But the Tea Party voters are sincere, okay? They're sincere about their priorities. And Eric Cantor was completely working to represent Wall Street.
Yeah.
And they finally said, well, okay, this is a podcast. Screw you.
You can curse. We can curse here. We can curse.
Okay. I don't very much. But the Tea Party in Virginia said, if you're not going to represent what the Republican voter interests are, we can replace you. And the Tea Party organized against the second most important, second most wealthy Republican in the U.S. House of Representatives. And they ran against him in the primary election. Well, most people don't even pay attention to what a primary election is. It's the election that nobody goes to. It's the election that happens in the summer, which the Democratic primary determines which Democrat will be on the ballot, okay, to run against which Republican who was selected in the Republican primary, okay? Tea Party organized nationally. They got contributions from all over. They ran a Tea Party candidate who had never run for office before.
Yeah.
Eric Cantor outspent his competition 10-1, and he still lost his election because the voters organized. The conservatives in a red district organized and said, you're fired, okay? And here's the thing. Eric Cantor proved.
Yeah.
No amount of money changes the turnout in the primary because most voters go, I'm going to vote in November. All those other elections don't count for diddly squat. Okay. And I figured it up. Of the population of Virginia's 7th district, which is Eric Cantor's district, what percentage of residents do you think it took to defeat the second most powerful Republican in the U.S. House of Representatives? What percentage of the residents of that district do you suppose turned out?
Pretty good number.
How big do you have to be to toss out a very important person in Congress with an unlimited budget? Guess a percentage.
Oh man, probably to beat someone an establishment. Oh man,
Establishment with an unlimited budget. Okay. And I'm talking about the residents, okay, not the voters. I'm saying the residents of that district. What percentage of the residents had to wake up and decide to fire their member of the House?
I don't know. What's the number?
Pick a number. I'm having fun here.
55%.
No.
Higher than
Lower.
that? Lower? 39.
Lower.
22?
Lower.
12.
Lower.
7.
Lower.
2%.
4%.
4%.
It took 4% of the residents of that district to wake up and say, we're going to fire Eric Cantor in the primary. And they threw his ass out. Okay. It takes a very small, now in a blue district, okay, where you've got a Democrat serving in the House of Representatives, it's a majority blue district that they're coming from. 4% of the Democrats who said, we're tired of having a candidate who's thinking of Wall Street first. We've been pushing this person for decades to try and represent us, Okay. And we're only getting a half to a third representation. Only on those issues where there isn't a conflict with Wall Street do we ever get a vote in our direction. 4% of the Democrats, if they woke up, no, 4% of the residents, that might be 8% of the residents, that might be 12 to 16% of the Democrats. Okay, but you're talking about a small percentage of people can throw out the incumbent. And it doesn't matter what Wall Street has, and both parties have worked for decades to put voters to sleep on the primary. All right. Here's one of the things that happens, okay, in Washington, D.C. Both parties do it. It's not legal to raise campaign funds from within U.S. facilities. You can't do it from your office. You can't do it from inside the Capitol building. You can't raise funds for your next election. So here's what's going on. Everybody has got, the Democrats, the Republicans, and even some K Street have got call centers set up within walking distance of the U.S. Capitol building, because your average congressman spends 30 to 70% of their work week raising money for their next election. They are not even on government property for half of their work week. All right. They schedule votes in the House and the Senate so that these people can raise money for their next election. And I went, when I studied this, I didn't go off of anybody else's books. I studied this independently. And I went, this does not compute. The average incumbent has a 96% chance of getting reelected. Okay? The incumbent is a shoo-in. He will die in office. It's more likely that he'll die in office than he'll lose his election. Okay? And these fuckers are sitting in a cubicle in Cube City with a set of headphones in front of a computer, reading from a script to a list of potential rich donors. Okay? Why? What the hell is going on that these people are being told they have to raise money when they're almost certain to get reelected? And I looked at this paradox for years, and finally it hit me. These people are raising money not for the general election when they're running against the other party. They're raising a huge amount of money in case they have to beat off somebody from their own party running against them in the primary. Okay? They need to always be able to buy the pot, because it's almost impossible to raise money as a challenger in the primary election. Because anybody who looks at the statistics, anybody who's a betting man, you go to him and say, I want you to contribute, and the individual limit is $2,800 to my election because I'm going to run against the incumbent. Like, wait, you can't win against the incumbent. Okay? I like you. I believe what you're doing. Here's $100. I'm not giving you almost $3,000 because that money is going to get burned up and go away. All right. Both parties have built a system where the incumbent will almost surely win because voters don't go. But there's a flip side to that coin. If the voters do go, the incumbent is fucked. You see what I'm saying? So in November, in Virginia's 7th district, when the Republicans went to vote and they looked at their ballot, they went, what happened to that guy named Eric Cantor? I elected him 7 times, and gee, I wonder if he died or he retired. Because these are low information voters. They didn't pay any goddamn attention. They vote the party ticket, and they voted for the Republican, predictably. The reformist will be the guy on the ballot if you win in the primary. This means you go ahead and acknowledge that there are blue districts and there are red districts that have a natural majority. Sometimes it's artificial, sometimes it's gerrymandered, but most of the time it's natural. There are no blue districts in Montana. Okay? There are no red districts in Northern California. Okay. So you go ahead and organize the Democrats to throw out the crooked Democratic incumbent. You organize the Republicans to throw out the corrupt Republican in those districts, where the challengers on both sides have agreed on what reform means. And you wind up not with a Democratic majority or Republican majority. These people form a caucus. They are a reformist majority who wants to get money out of politics. And they turn around and they go to the highest authority in the United States, which is not the US Supreme Court. It is not the president. It is the American voter. And they say, we're here. We're here by mandate. You wanted us to get money out of politics. We are here. And we are up against the establishment. You, the voters, have got to back us on what we're going to try to do. Because only if the establishment in Congress realizes that this is torches and pitchforks time, because we have the power to pass it, we have a majority, but we're going to have to beat down the resistance of the establishment, and it can be done. But the reason there isn't activity right now is people don't believe it can be done. It's impossible, they think. Well, let me tell you what impossible is. Impossible is landing a gyrocopter on the lawn of the US Capitol building. That's impossible. I've done that. This can be done. People just have to understand that they have the power as voters, and they're going to get the message from the media and from both political parties that they don't have the power, and it's a lie. If we didn't have the power, these bastards would not spend half of their work week doing what they thoroughly despise. I've worked in a cube city, okay? I hate sitting in front of a computer talking to people I can't see. Nobody's doing that for fun. They're doing it because they know there's a weakness in the system that the voters can exploit. Both parties know about it. Everybody in Congress knows about it, and they aren't saying it out loud. I'm sorry. I successfully put you to sleep. I do that. It's a gift I have.
Oh, sorry?
I said I successfully put you to sleep. This is a gift I have.
I wasn't asleep. I'm awake. It was just
me and Crocodile Dundee, you know, they'll I'm serious. I honestly believe that the voters have
connection.
power.
I was losing connection.
Yeah,
no, I'm back now. I'm back. It's swirling a little bit. I'm back. But yeah, it's just to show you they start making patterns, like they start, especially here in Pennsylvania, they started Republicans started trying to gerrymander certain parts of Pennsylvania so that they would vote red. And then, like you said, certain parts of Northern California are always blue. And it's just crazy that the people have given so much power to Congress. We by not trying to keep these people in check, trying to find some way, because like you said, term limits isn't going to help, because either way, as soon as they get into office, they get into their pockets.
Before they're selected, when a seat opens up, I looked at the career path of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, okay, and she graduated from college. She worked for a state congressman who became a state senator, who became a federal member of the U.S. House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Every time he left the job, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who originally started on his staff, okay, ran for and won every seat he vacated. She followed his wake, okay? And I'm saying this is a particularly flagrant example, but I think it happens everywhere, in my opinion. Okay. The party is looking for people who are indoctrinated and reliable. Okay. And when a seat is going to be vacant, they go ahead and they hook up the money with the person that they've said, look, this is somebody we're grooming. He, she is going to do what we want them to do. All right. So you're just not going to see very many candidates like Bernie Sanders who actually operate independently. Okay. And the Republican who was elected, who replaced Eric Hicks, he was an independent.
One of the first things they do is crazy Bernie and his crazy ideas. That's how they get. That's how they turn the people against them. They crazy Bernie and his crazy ideas. Like his ideas aren't right for America. Like something's got to change, because what y'all doing for America isn't working for us. It's working for you guys. Working for big corporate America.
Okay, the way I would define who can participate in elections, and I told you, no corporations, we'd have to reverse Citizens United, and only small dollar donations, okay? It would no longer be feasible for somebody to sit in a cube city if the maximum donation he could get is $200, okay? He can't raise enough money for it to be worth his while. So they would not do that. And a lot of them, instead of sitting in Cube City, would be on Capitol Hill doing their damn jobs. Okay.
Yeah.
Things change because these people now, they actually have the time to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
They have the time to meet with their counterparts in their party or in the other party. Okay. Because they're spending all their time in Cube City. When do they have the chance to meet, discuss, try to form alliances? Okay. Do the things that used to happen in Congress, okay? They've got the people who are in Congress, members, they've got these people on a leash. Who's got them on a leash? Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And here's what I'm leading to. The way I would define reform, the parties would not be able to contribute money. They would not be able to participate in individual elections. How do the parties control a new member of Congress? With money. When you're running for election, okay, they're collecting a big pot of, they're collecting a slice of money from everybody who's collecting money. That's everybody. So the Democratic Party and the Republican Party has got this huge pot, and they divvy up that money in order to try and strengthen somebody who's in a tight election. You with me so far?
Yep.
All right. This means that if you buck the party, they can tell you directly or indirectly, you get in a tight election, we'll fucking sacrifice your ass. You won't get a dime from us. All right? So these people are being told, we've got you on a leash. You got to go out there and collect money. We require that you give some of that money to us. Okay? And we decide whether or not we will support you if you get in a tight race. So they are saying, we got you on a leash. This is how you can vote, okay? I'm the voter. I elected that member. He's working for me, not the party, okay? I do not want him answering to party leaders I didn't elect. What is the deal? You guys go ahead and put the Democratic Party people up for election. Maybe this works, okay? Now my member in Congress is representing people whom I selected. But right now, my elected member of Congress is representing non-elected leaders of the party who are manipulated by Wall Street. So you take the money away, all right? The party can jump up and down and beat their chest, but they got no leverage anymore. Everybody in Congress starts to represent their constituency because that's where the power is, okay? When they're running for office, they're going, how can we get a big crowd together? How can I talk to the largest number of people to convince? Well, we've got these senior groups, and we've got this group, and we've got that. These people start pitching to the people instead of the people with money. They start listening to the people who will elect them instead of the people with money. The whole dynamic changes. But the The primary election is the Achilles heel of corruption. The primary election, if we nationalize the primary elections across the country on the same issue, defined exactly the same way, what is the corruption? What is the big money in politics thing we're going to end? Okay, everybody's working from the same playbook on what they are going to do. And then when they get elected, they turn around and they bring it to the people and say, you put us here. Now you have got to back us because we are going to get shut down by the leadership in Congress. We have a majority, and what you asked us to do can happen, but you need to show up in force.
Yeah.
You're not hearing this from the media. You're not hearing this from any member of Congress, okay? The entire system, every institution you would turn to as a safety valve to protect democracy has been co-opted. I'm not making this up.
No, you're not.
I'm not paranoid. I am not a crazy person. Maybe I am and I don't know it. No. You're listening to me. It is not irrational. Okay? Money in politics is the root of the paralysis. Okay? And we have the power to end it. And nobody's saying it out loud.
They can't. They risk losing the money.
Well, they risk losing their money, and somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who is, I think, pretty honest, okay? If she said what I said as baldly as I had said it, she'd be sitting alone in the cafeteria. She would have no friends who would associate with her among her peers in Congress, okay? And if she wanted to make progress on any bill, they would vote against it just to spite her for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Nobody's allowed to speak the bald truth. Nobody who's part of any institution. And I wondered for a year when I said that I believe the media is co-opted, and I would say this to members of the Washington, D.C. press who were interviewing me, okay? After the camera was off, they'd say, Doug, I hear what you're saying, but you're wrong. I can talk about anything. I can cover anything, okay? There is no gag order, okay? After Democracy Spring happened, a year after I flew, they got nothing to say, all right? They are still honest journalists, but they now know they are working in a corrupt system. They will not be allowed to say, they had been told they're allowed to say anything. They now know the coverage is going to be downplayed. It's going to be muted. It's going to, okay. And when I made my flight, okay, they would mumble the three words, campaign finance reform, and they would go on to talk about terrorism, acknowledging that I was not a terrorist, that I never intended any harm, okay? There was almost nobody who talked about the contents of my letter. One exception being Democracy Now, okay? Independent. But all of the networks mentioned the mailman who did this to try and reform campaign finance, terrorism. Let's talk about what could have happened. There might have been 500 people with sabers who would have landed in gyrocopters and invaded the Capitol building and beheaded everyone, okay? They go off on some ridiculous tangent about what could have happened instead of why I flew and what I was saying.
Yeah.
So I gotta find a way of doing an end around.
Podcast is the way to do it. Podcast is the way to do it. Yeah, podcast is the way to do it. You gotta sit down and speak to as many podcasts as you can. I have someone I can connect you with. His name is Anthony Williams. You and him would talk very well. And he really seriously he speaks his mind. He's a fellow New Yorker like me. He speaks his mind.
I'm hoping I can work my way, because podcasters are interested in hearing the truth, speaking the truth, and spreading the truth. Okay.
Yes.
Ethically, you people are there. You know that you have become the safety valve, okay, for honestly telling the truth. So I'm hoping that I'm going to find myself welcome, and I can go ahead and move up through the ranks to where I'm speaking to larger audiences, okay? And if I wanted to get rich, I could have stayed a mailman, okay? I'm definitely not getting rich now. I don't expect to get rich from my book. That's not my objective. I am here because I think that we can do something that will make this nation what you and I were told it was supposed to be when we went to school. And it's not.
Yeah.
And we're frustrated by it. And a lot of people who are conservatives are angry, okay, because they know the government they got is not the government they were promised.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Doug, this has been great. This is gonna. I can't wait to release this. I'm actually gonna release it probably next week. This has been real good. I'm actually gonna look. I'm gonna link you up with my friend Anthony Williams. I'll send you his email. I'll talk to him and see if it's okay. And yeah, it definitely hook you guys up, man. But now is the part of the show where you let everybody know where they can find you, your book, your website, everything.
The book is Flight Plan is the title. The subtitle is A Mailman's Aerial Adventure and Special Delivery. Okay, but if you go for Flight Plan, Doug Hughes, there's a picture of a gyrocopter on the cover. You can get that through Amazon. I've also got a website, really catchy name, Doug Hughes Author. Okay. Yeah, there. So DougHughesAuthor.com. And it's only through the website that you can purchase an autograph copy. Okay. I have been known to autograph copies for the people who bought regular copies. But that I go ahead and send out directly. Instead of being the Amazon, this is done by Ingram Press. It's a little bit higher quality book as far as the paper or the cover. I happen to like that better, which is why I'm selling that out of my website. And if this thing catches on, then I'm going to be pitching to get it represented in bookstores, which Ingram can do. Amazon doesn't. There are no books that are printed by Kindle. By the way, it is available by Kindle electronic book as well. Yeah. But the Kindle books are not stocked in bookstores. And so I went with both. I went with Amazon because that's about 45 to 55% of sales are through Amazon. Yeah. And then I went also through Ingram, which I'm allowed to do by both contracts. And they will stock the bookstores. And this allows me to cover both ends. Usually a person goes with conventional and the sales through Amazon, the author gets his clock cleaned because the publisher doesn't take a cut and Amazon wants their cut. So guess who gives up the money for a book to be sold through Amazon? It comes out of the author's pocket. So this way I get the best of both worlds. So you can get it through Amazon and you can get it through my website.
Awesome. Just hang on 1 second. I'm just giving my shout outs and we're going to talk a little bit off camera. All right. So now it's time for shout outs. Big shout out to my Real Wise family, Bobby J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. Love you, baby. Appreciate all you do. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless you. Be safe. And you know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out. I'm a little behind here.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at @wise_b_blunt, Instagram at @wise_b_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.